So this is Matt from Middle Express Radio. I'm here with Benny of Lost Symphony. Other than the obvious unfortunate news today regarding Eddie Van Halen, how are you otherwise?
I mean, dude, did 2020 get any darker for real? Like, I mean, honestly, like, all these things I hear on the news, I'm like, I can withstand it. Like, it's gotten to a point where I've become, like, comfortably numb from it all. But, like, even knowing that Eddie Van Halen was sick, hearing that, like, it was just like a shot through my heart.
Absolutely, and obviously coming from Lost Symphony, you guys, huge guitar geek band, have a lot of brilliant solos, your stuff. What do you think your personal favorite solo from Eddie Van Halen is?
You know, man, like, here's the thing. It's not like I have a favorite solo of Eddie Van Halen. I think that I just like his reckless abandon. I like the fact that he was so over the... I can't even get my mind around saying was. He was so technically proficient, but at the same time, like, just wildly random. You know, like, he'd play, not to get, again, super guitar geeky, but he'd play, like, weird groups of notes. He'd be, like, 7, then 5, then 3, then 9. But he'd always said he would end back up on his feet. And that's what I liked about Eddie Van Halen. Like, he also wasn't one of those guys, either, that had to do an Yngwie Malmsteen long solo in the middle of a song. Like, Eddie would take, like, 4 bars or 8 bars and out. And, like, when you're that good, like, it was more about the songs. So, like, I like Eddie Van Halen because he's, like, one of those guitar players that's so ridiculous and over the top, but he was contained in a band. He's not a Steve Vai type or a Joe Satriani, you know, that's so outrageous. Like, I mean, even though Steve Vai was in Whitesnake and all, but, like, they can't be contained in a band. They're not, like, band guys. They're, like, so ridiculous. Like, what are you supposed to do with Steve Vai in a band? Eddie Van Halen was, like, the ultimate party rock guitar player that could also melt your face off, and anybody's face off for that matter.
Nicely said, man. The band's sophomore album, Chapter 2, is set to be released October 16th. What can you tell fans about the upcoming album?
Well, I mean, so you definitely nailed it as far as, like, we are guitar-driven. For people that don't know, you know, we are an instrumental rock band, and I know that's, like, such a avant-garde, silly thing to say, but, like, basically, I've always been influenced by, you know, classical music and, like, a lot of movie scores, you know, and I always thought it'd be cool, like, oh my god, what if you put, like, Slash over, you know, the soundtrack to John Wick? And, like, that's kind of, like, what we did with Lost Symphony. It's literally, you know, almost like classical compositions, but with a live orchestra over and crazy guitar playing. And where Chapter 1 was, I think, more of a concise record, as far as we have a lot of crazy guitar playing, but it was, like, more of, you know, I would definitely say concise compositions. Chapter 2 is, like, it's the most over-the-top guitar playing, I think, of all the stuff that we've done, and we've gone through Chapter 3 already. And by that, I mean, like, the whole record starts off with Jeff Loomis and Marty Friedman together. You know, so if you're a guitar fan, like, I'm a guitar fan. I'm a huge fan of Marty Friedman. I've always been a fan of Megadeth. I've always been a fan of Marty in particular. And then Jeff Loomis, to me, as far as a guy that can play anything. So, you know, I grew up listening to Cacophony, you know, and Jason Becker, and I thought to myself, like, what if we did, like, almost an homage to Cacophony? And the first song on that record is "The World Is Over," which of course is a great and apt name for 2020. And it's Jeff Loomis and Marty Friedman duking it out with Siobhan Cronin, who was the violinist from Trans-Siberian Orchestra and is in Starset now, as well as Kelly Karaluk, who's our guitar player, who's one of the more, I guess, unknown guys, but also a ridiculous player. So if you're into orchestra, if you're into composition, if you're into just, you know, cool music to go, like, ride around on your motorcycle, like, this is it for you.
How was it working with the other special guests on the album, such as David Ellefson of Megadeth as well, and the late Ollie Herbert of All That Remains?
Well, you know, Ellefson was so cool, man, because, like, he actually he was the guy that flew from Scottsdale, Arizona to Boston, and it's funny, because a lot of people did the stuff remotely. I mean, most of it was recorded at my home studio, but David was like, you know what, I want to come record with you and see what the vibe is like, and he came to Boston, and he came to my house, which was just crazy, because, like, I mean, I bought my euthanasia shirt in 1994. So to have like the dudes, I have signed Megadeth posters on my wall. So to have like him come to my house, and he pulled up in his Mercedes, and I could tell he was kind of like, "This is it." And then he walks downstairs, and anyone that knows me, I have a studio called Speakeasy Studios. I have over 100 guitars and tons of crazy rock and roll stuff. He was like, "Oh yeah, this is definitely the place." And we spent 2 days with David, and he was just awesome. It was so cool to be able to work with him because, one, Corey, who's our bass player, but also does a lot of the engineering, he plays some guitar. Like him, my brother, and David are all bass players. So them working together, like I had no idea how studious someone like David Ellefson was. So having him play on a song, like I Felt a Funeral in My Brain, which is a song that actually was Chopin, inspired. Seeing David Ellefson come up with these crazy bass lines, and also hearing how much it just sounds like Megadeth. No matter what he does, he actually brought his bass that he used on Cryptic Writings, and I'm like, that's the exact sound. And he just plugged it in, and it just goes to show the tone is in your fingers. So that was a thrill. And then Ollie Herbert, man, I can't tell you how lucky it was, because it wasn't like we just worked together. Ollie was truly one of my best friends, one of Corey's best friends, a really good friend to my brother, all in this band. And we grew such a camaraderie making this music, because with All That Remains, it's much more of a metal, I don't want to say pop metal because they're not pop metal, but verse, chorus, solo. Whereas the first time we did a song with Ollie, he's like 64 bars of solo. I've never even composed something that long. And he was a composer and a teacher before he was even anything else. So he was just really excited to be able to work on music that was so out of the box by comparison. So this is some of the last recordings he did. So I got to just tell you, it was an honor. And then, of course, when he passed, which was October 2nd, 2 years ago. So, Jesus, October, what a month. Eddie Van Halen and Ollie Herbert. We all felt as a band like a deep, deep responsibility to get Ollie's music out there so that people could hear it, because, a lot of people love All That Remains, but I hope that even more people, now that he's gone, will recognize that he is a guitar hero through and through. And certainly on Lost Symphony, he will not disappoint anybody.
And the band recently released the single, Conflagration, which features Ollie Herbert. What kind of feedback have you received on the song?
I mean, so far it's doing really well on Spotify. We were actually added to a few channels. One of the stations had no other instrumental new bands, which is cool, because obviously, we're like a niche within a niche as far as a style of music, and we've been accepted really openly into multiple genres. So it's been cool. That song in itself, obviously, pun intended, it's kind of a burner. So it definitely exemplifies how crazy and virtuoso some of the playing is on this record. And I think that it sets the tone for chapter 2, in the sense that if you like that, there's a lot more where that came from.
Any particular song you would suggest a fan to check out first off of chapter 2?
I really think it's like asking the Eddie Van Halen question, what's your favorite solo? I think every song on this record at some point was my favorite song. So it's more of just what's going to resonate with people. And I know I've said this in a bunch of interviews, but it's kind of a crazy concept. But I really want people to listen to the record from start to finish. It has, stuff in between the songs. It's really one idea with movements. And so it's really more of just listen to it from the beginning and see what resonates with you. Because so far with chapter 1, everyone seems to have a different favorite song, which to me as a composer is great, because it's not one is better than the other. It certainly inspires people in different ways.
And what do you see plans for Lost Symphony when all is safe with the pandemic?
I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, the whole entertainment industry has been hit so hard, period. From the venues to the bands to all the people that help those bands, to the recording studios, to the DJs, to the nightclubs, to the restaurants. It's mind-boggling. So the only thing that I can hope after this pandemic is that people will start to revalue music, because there's groups of people alive, age groups, that have never bought a record ever. So how are you supposed to sustain a music industry? And now they've taken literally everything else away because of what's going on, and obviously, understandably, because it's crazy, So I don't know what we're going to do. All I can hope is that we can play for people and that they can experience our music, and that, we'll be able to continue doing this. But who knows? I didn't expect to wake up and all of a sudden have to wear a mask one day, and then you can't go here and you can't do that, and by the way, you don't have a job. So, it's insane. I'm just hoping that everyone stays healthy and we get through this, and afterwards we can all rock and roll all together again.
Yeah, and from getting to talk to you, you're obviously passionate about your band and just music in general, which I think is great. I'm obviously passionate about what I do as well. I mean, it's been great talking to you, and I love what I've heard from the band. And I feel like right now, if you don't go out and you buy even a vinyl album or music in general, I mean, you're missing out. There's nothing like having the physical copy. You know what I mean? You see the artwork, you see the things, you support the band at the end of the day. And when this blows over, I don't know what I'm going to do with myself if there's no concerts or anymore, especially heavy metal in general, which really depends on the fans.
Well, I mean, listen, a lot of people assume because you're in a heavy metal band or because you're in a band and you have a lot of followers on social media or what have you, that you're rich and that you can just do this. And I can't tell you how many bands I've seen over the years who've imploded or had super problems, whether they're family or financial based, just because it's so hard to keep it going. And, fans think, oh, yeah, just because, you had a single on MTV or just because somebody saw you in a video, that therefore you can just do this. And it's become so brutally hard. And now it's like it skipped a generation, because there was a whole generation where everyone's like, let's steal this music off the internet. And now people are like, no, I'll pay $29.99 for a vinyl. So it's starting to turn around in the sense that people are now revaluing a lot of things that for a long time nobody cared about. So my hope is that there are new ways for bands to make money, because bands don't make a lot of money off streaming at all. It's absolutely ridiculous. Mm-hmm. So you have a whole group of young budding musicians who are like, okay, cool, I'm amazing, I have so many hits on this, and they can't do it. You can't even go do it because there's no way to make money. Even if you are as good as Eddie Van Halen, the hope that you can make it is so much smaller in today's society, because even if you get a single, it's not back in the day. You had a single on MTV, you might be able to retire, believe it or not, if you played your cards right. Now it's oh, cool, you might be able to tour for one more month.
And with this year almost over, what have been some of your favorite releases?
Man, I gotta tell you, I stick my head in the ground with new releases, and I realized reading something about the psychology of music is that a lot of people stop caring about bands after 20 years old. And for me, it's especially with metal, after Pantera, I didn't even care. People had to drag me to Lamb of God and Meshuggah, and even All That Remains. I didn't even know who Ollie Herbert was until the drummer, Jason Costa, said, hey, Ollie liked the song we did together, which is a song called Leave Well Enough Alone on Chapter 2, was me and Jason. But I knew Jason from a band called Diecast. So we were just boys because he's from Quincy. You know what I mean?
I remember Diecast.
Yeah, I used to jam with him down the hall in Quincy. So, I asked him, hey, man, would you play some crazy stuff? And he hadn't done any other bands, but he was really good friends with Corey and myself. And ironically, we ended up playing on the Thunder Rolls for All That Remains around that same time. And, he came down and killed it. And Ollie apparently heard that song, and he heard Conrad Simon and Kelly Terluke, who are two virtual unknown guitarists, but they're from Canada, and they're just mind-boggling. And he was just like, I need to know more about this. I need to be a part of it. So it was actually because he heard those guys that Ollie came down, and it wasn't until Matt LaPierre, who's one of the guitarists on Conflagration, was down in the studio saying, hey, do you know that dude's a guitar hero? And I grew up worshiping him and watching his video. I was like, really, that guy? Because Ollie was so mellow and definitely didn't present himself as a big deal. So I just thought he was this really nice guy that shredded the guitar. I had no fucking idea that he was, as incredible as he turned. I mean, I was lucky enough to see. So it's one of those things where when people ask me new releases, it's not that I'm trying to be ignorant to it. I'm sitting in a studio for hours a day working on mixes. So I'll obsess over the same some song I've worked on 800 times and don't listen to the radio and don't pay attention to anything that's going on as far as music, because it bums me out. I don't have a problem with a lot of those people, but people were complaining about the new Cardi B song, haven't even heard it. Don't even want to hear it. Because my previous job, like in this last world before the pandemic, was actually being a DJ. So I was subjected to listen to that kind of crap. And now that I don't even have to do that, I don't even want to know about it.
Question right now. Say if you got to sit with Eddie Van Halen, what would have been the one guitar solo of yours that you would have showed him?
Guitar solo of mine?
Yep, that you would show Eddie.
I don't know if I'd want to show him any of my solos. I think I'd want to sit at the piano and play some stuff for him. Because one of the things that I loved about Eddie, so everyone talks about how he inspired their guitar playing. Eddie Van Halen inspired my piano playing. Stuff like Right Now and just like all those 80s power ballads that everyone hates about Van Hagar was like what made me go, holy shit, why is it going and everything's locking it? I loved that because it was one of the first things as a kid, because I was born in 82. So when you had like a 5150 and OU812, I'm like barely 9-10 years old. It was one of the first times I would hear stuff on the radio and go, holy crap. Like, he was one of the first guitar players I literally stopped, looked at the person I was carpooling on the way to school, and who is that playing right now? And she goes, it's Van Halen. And she gave me the tape and said, go listen to it.
So if there's nothing that we've gone over that you would like to throw in, go right ahead.
Yeah, just, look, this is music made by musicians for people to get lost in. It doesn't have lyrics because it's supposed to take you to different places. I don't want to tell people what the songs mean to me because they can completely mean something different to somebody else. The whole point is that this music was made over a long period of time with a lot of very talented people. And there was so much passion and so many different types of techniques and thoughts and emotions put into what this is, that I can tell you that truly it is a ride. It is a record that takes you from point A to point B to point C to point D to point E and then back around again, which is what was indicative of all of my favorite records growing up. When you listen to Queen, News of the World, like that record took you from a point to another point, from high to low and everything in between. You listen to an Aerosmith record from start to finish. There's just some of those records that are just perfect. And I got to tell you that one of the things that was cool about not putting vocals on this was that, when I was a kid, I used to rewind all to my favorite solos, like November Rain, Guns N' Roses. I didn't want to hear the 8 minutes, the 6.5 minutes of the other part of the song. I just wanted to hear the end solo all the time. And basically what Lost Symphony is like the 14-year-old me going, hey, let's rewind to the solos, but instead of having vocals, let's just make the guitar sing. And that's what this record is. And I just hope that, people listen to it and it moves them somehow. Because the worst thing that could ever happen is someone listens to it and forgets it the very next minute. And I know that Ollie would not want to be forgotten.
So really my last question for you is, what is some advice you would give to someone that is just starting to learn guitar?
Only do it if you're passionate about it and you're willing to put in the time. Because like anything, it sounds cliche, like school, like any hobby, any sport. If you want to be good at it, you gotta work for it. I can't tell you how many times I worked with a student and heard them cry about their fingers bleeding. I remember when I got my first water blister underneath my finger from playing Eruption in particular, and popping it and seeing all the water come out and going, cool, and then going back and playing it again until another one developed. And that's like, if you have that level of neurosis, if you have to channel your emotions into something, then play guitar. If you just want to learn a song by Dave Matthews Band to impress your girlfriend, pick up a ukulele or a recorder and fuck off. So that's pretty much my thing. If you're going to do it, go 100%. But don't do it because you want to get chicks. Don't do it because you want to make money. Don't do it for any other reason other than music should make you happy. And if you want to be good at it, try.
Hey, it was great talking to you. I love what I've heard from the group so far. I really can't wait to hear the album next week. Best wishes to you, your family, your friends during this tough timing. And I really hope that yourself as well as the band come out on top when all is safe and that music can strike back.
Yeah, dude, back at you.